Hello, y'all, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Reaction Show. This is episode 3. This is a special edition because this is right after Monday Night Football, Jets versus Bills. You guys know what time it is. I'm here with Joel Dehls, the Jets fan, and we are lucky enough to be having as well Mr. Joel Moran join us
Ah, there
for
he
episode
is.
3. We couldn't talk about the Jets. We could not talk about Jets football without having Joel on. Listen, the floor is yours, gentlemen. Have at it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, fellas. Drew, amazing intro. My goodness, Dales, you wearing the Zach Wilson is good shirt on.
We're here.
You had to represent for the New York Jets. Now, listen, for all the haters out there, because the Jets get a lot of hate. For all the haters, we won this game 22-16. Xavier Gibson, punt return touchdown. Somebody who was on the brisk of not even making on the cusp of not even making a roster. He makes the roster. He was documented on Hard Knocks. People are saying it just might have won, but they lost the season. Listen, I don't care. I already thought the season was over. I want to go to sleep with some high hopes with a Jets W. It does suck though, because I look at how our defense played. 3 interceptions on Josh Allen. We just got a $100 super chat. Shout out to Andre. My goodness.
Appreciate the love, bro.
Our defense played elite. Defensive line was elite. 3 interceptions on Josh Allen. Jordan Whitehead had all 3. Josh Allen fumbled. He had 4 total turnovers. Our rushing attack, Breece Hall, 100 plus yards on the ground. I mean, he had 2 carries and 106 yards. At one point, it was 108. And Garrett Wilson, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness, a touchdown catch.
That's a bad man.
From Zach
That's
Wilson.
a bad man.
I am under the belief that Zach Wilson has marginally improved. And if Zach Wilson is marginally improved, I think Garrett Wilson can still have a big time year, not offensive player of the year type year, but he can still have
Not
over
Tyreek.
1,000
Not
yards.
Tyreek.
Not Tyreek. If he had Aaron Rodgers, he's going for 2,000 this year. There's no doubt about it. But with Zach Wilson, I think it could be like 1,300 this year. You know, he could do some Calvin Ridley kind of stat lines up there. But listen, the Jets won a game. I'm super ecstatic that we won. But obviously, if we lose Aaron Rodgers for the season, our season's over. Robert Saleh said it doesn't look good. I'm not expecting to hear good news in the morning. So whatever comes out, I'm just going to ride with it. I'm already under the assumption our season is pretty much over. And I'm just glad we got this win. That's the only thing I can ask for.
Joel,
I
before
woke
you
up this
go,
morning.
before
Sorry,
you
go
go,
ahead, go
bro,
ahead.
you dropped an all-time video on Twitter. Give him a follow at Joel Dehls. I watched that video smiling ear to ear. Your excitement got me going. I was rooting for the Jets like I was born a Jets fan. Talk to me.
I
How did you
appreciate that.
feel watching that damn game?
Oh my God, the swing of emotions. First of all, I got my Zach Wilson is good shirt on. I've been wearing this since 9 o'clock this morning when I got up. For
Real.
whatever reason, I woke up. I don't know what shirt I'm wearing. I was like, I'm gonna put this on, and here we are. It was like 8 o'clock. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep this on. This is what we're gonna rock with. Rodgers goes down. I'm like, fuck. Like, did I do this? Having the Zach Wilson is good shirt on.
I don't want to laugh. I don't mean to laugh, but the way you're coming across is funny.
But oh my God, swing of emotions, right? Rodgers goes down early, and it just feels like the life just gets sucked out of you. Like all of the hype, we've been waiting months between Hard Knocks and One Jets Drive, and you see Rodgers at MSG and Broadway, and he's New York, and he's embracing it, and it's finally here, and he gets 4 plays before the season is likely over. It sucks. So the Jets' long-term outlook this season, it's not great. I mean, if you want to be on the optimistic side of things, they were 5-2 last year with Zach Wilson before Breece went down. If you want to be optimistic, you could say, hey, the Jets have arguably the best 1-2 rushing attack in the NFL. They're going to have one of the best defenses in the league. If they could keep games close, maybe at the end of games they could take the lead like they just did against Buffalo. But the, deep playoff run aspirations, the possible Super Bowl aspirations that we had, without Aaron Rodgers, it's a real long shot barring something crazy. And I know a lot of people are kind of wondering what the Jets are going to do at quarterback. They're going to bring someone in because I don't think you could just have Zach and Boyle on the roster. But I'm not expecting them to really go out there and make a big move. I'd be surprised if they went out there and traded for a Ryan Tannehill. People are saying like Kyler Murray. I think maybe a guy like Carson Wentz or you bring Joe Flacco back, but For one good reason or another, I think it's Zach for the rest of the year. He's the one in training camp. He's been the one who's, been in those meeting rooms. He's been the one learning Hackett's playbook. So I have a hard time believing that you could bring in another quarterback while the season's going on and he could just learn the playbook on the fly and you could just run with it. It seems like a long shot to me. So I'm under the impression that Zach is going to be the starter going forward with probably another backup to compete with Boyle. But to talk about this game, I mean, the Jets defense that we've been talking about showed up. The defensive line was getting after him all day. 4 turnovers for Josh Allen. That's why I picked them. And the pick 'em now, I thought we were going to have Rodgers. And the pick 'em, I said, last year with Zach Wilson, we were able to beat this team at home. I knew how great this front four was going to be. Wasn't expected Whitehead to get 3 picks. Honestly, our worst defender might have been Sauce in this game. He did not have a great game.
For sure.
But overall, defensively, they were the reason we won this game. They kept us in this. The offense was stalling. They were struggling to score points. We came up big at the end where we forced a turnover, kicked the field goal to go up 3. Unfortunately, they tie it, but then overtime, Xavier Gibson just returned for the ages, wins the game. Oh, my God. It's a great feeling. I don't know how many we're going to get like this as Jets fans without Aaron Rodgers, but I'm happy with this one.
What a swing of emotions is 100% right. To start this game, to have Rodgers not even play the full drive, him go out with injury, Zach Wilson comes onto the field. Shout out to our guys over at Mojo, because when Zach Wilson entered the game, I don't know, man, something about it. I just felt an energy shift. And I was rooting for the Jets, like I said already, like I've been a Jets fan my entire life. I felt something inside me. I said, fuck it. Let's throw some money on the New York Jets. Right now, nobody has them winning this game, especially Mojo. I caught them at 27 cents. What a decision that was. And Zach Wilson, he definitely was not anticipating getting in on this game at all. You could see he was a little bit anxious. But one thing, I agree with you, Joel. He marginally improved because what he was doing more than anything else was seeing the check down, seeing the easy throws. He was not trying to make things more difficult on himself more often than not. He was extending plays. Those might have been a little bit erratic, might have been a little bit cause for concern, but there were really no negative plays there. He seemed to get out of trouble. He was throwing the ball away after making those crazy plays that had you scratching your head. What are you doing, Zach? But when it mattered most, on 3rd down, a couple of times, Zach, I believe one time actually, what that really sticks out was that throw that he's about to get sacked, makes the throw to the tight end gets the 1st down. He had some solid plays. Getting the 1st down on 4th. I want to credit Coach Saleh for having the balls to actually go for it there in Buffalo territory. A kick puts you up 3, but it's understood you're trying to waste as much clock as possible. Josh Allen is Josh Allen. He had a terrible game, no doubt about it, but he still was able to give you that one drive to tie this game, to send it into overtime. So ultimately, that call ended up blessing the New York Jets, because if you give Josh Allen a little more time, who knows? He was marching. And that drive was 100% Stephon Diggs. Did not matter if he was on Sauce. Did not matter if he was on DJ Reed. He was having his way that entire drive. That offensive pass interference call, that is, come on, what are we doing here? You'll take it absolutely as Jets fans, but that was so marginal. Peyton Manning was losing his mind, and so was I. I was like, it's hand fighting. That is every single play between a wide receiver and a cornerback. You mentioned it. Sauce Gardner was not that good. He probably, and in my opinion, most definitely was your worst defensive player. Really crazy. It seemed as if they didn't care. They were targeting Sauce. Shout out to Jordan Whitehead. 3 interceptions. He played out of his mind. But the swing of emotions to be able to come away with this victory after the first drive when you already feel like your season's over, and to come out with this W, you take this high right now that you're feeling. You won this game. You beat a division rival. You won on opening night. But the sad realization sits with the fact that you might lose Aaron Rodgers for this entire season, and your hopes and your aspirations of being a strong playoff team, being a Super Bowl contender is unfortunately just not realistic. Joel, last thing I want to say, and I'll get questions from both of you guys, but you mentioned not being one that you want to go after Kyler Murray. You feel like it's a little bit more realistic for a Carson Wentz. I think with the position that the Cardinals are in, where it seems as if they're going to be flirting for that 1, maybe 2 spot, they will be most likely drafting a quarterback so that their salary cap is not killer anymore. Kyler Murray does become available, and it's definitely an option that I'm not glossing over. And I know that you respect Kyler Murray. You acknowledge how amazing he is. You did just trade for Aaron Rodgers. Unfortunately, it seems as if that's not going to go to plan. Kyler Murray seems like an unbelievable plan B, if you ask me.
The only issue I have, Kyler Murray's amazing. I would love for him to be the quarterback, is what happens if Aaron Rodgers saying I'm playing next year. Now you have Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers. You can't. That's just not.
Understood.
If Aaron Rodgers is saying like, listen, guys, I'm sorry, but this is it for me. I'm hanging it up. I just don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to know within the next month whether or not that's his decision. So to go out and make such a financial and draft pick wise,
absolutely,
to put that much into Kyler without knowing what's going to happen with Rodgers, that's why I think it's going to be something more minor, like a Carson Wentz, Joe Flacco, someone that will come in, be the backup quarterback. If Zach Wilson struggles, which could probably happen, a month down the line, 6 weeks down the line, once they know the playbook, then they could come in.
When it comes to Kyler Murray, there are two things that are deterring me from wanting him to be the Jets quarterback. Okay. Number one is the contract, and number two is the injury history. He's somebody that gets historically injured. For me, if Aaron Rodgers calls it quits because of this injury, which I don't know how I feel about it yet, because I do think at his age, suffering an Achilles injury, I mean, why not call it quits? That's a serious injury. But at the same time, I think he was very excited to play with the Jets. He wanted to bring winning football back to New York. And I think that getting injured in this fashion, it's kind of going to put him in like, you know what? I can't go out like this. I feel like they traded for me and I gave them nothing in return. I want to at least give it one more go and see how I feel. And I think the Jets will give him that. And I'm kind of leaning towards Aaron Rodgers playing with the Jets one more season, even though he was on the brink of retirement before he got traded to the Jets. But I think he will play one more year. I'm looking at the NFL draft. I'm looking at Drake May. I'm looking at
send me the mock drafts.
I'm looking at Shador Sanders. I'm looking at the NFL draft, because if Aaron Rodgers does play next year, draft a quarterback, let him sit behind Aaron Rodgers. We just saw what Jordan Love did. I mean, you sit behind Aaron Rodgers, you improve. Zach Wilson improved tonight. And that drive you were talking about, he had that big third down throw, but I thought even more impressive throw was a throw he threw to Garrett Wilson in between two zone defenders.
Absolutely. That
led to the touchdown that he threw to Garrett Wilson on like a couple plays after. So for me, sure, that was really the only drive that Zach Wilson strung together the entire game, where I was 100%. Like, okay, if you can just do that for 3 other quarters, we might have something here. But ultimately, I think that Kyler Murray is just too much of a risk to just trade for him. And I feel like we just have to play this out. We have to see how good Zach Wilson is still now that Aaron is out. We have to see if this guy can at least be a starting level quarterback. And we have to give Aaron the opportunity to want to come back from this injury, because this is his locker room.
Yeah, and at least you never want to have an Achilles injury, right? Or any injury of that matter. But for Aaron Rodgers, who makes his bread and butter from the pocket, he's not the same mobile quarterback he used to be. An Achilles injury is not the end of the world like it would be for, like we've seen with running backs in the past. An Achilles injury could just really be the end of your career. So for a quarterback that doesn't rely so much on his mobility, I think Rodgers could come back next year, and for the most part, he's still going to be that same guy. It's not like you're losing explosiveness. Like Aaron Rodgers, that's not the quarterback he is anymore. It's still, he's winning a majority of those snaps with his head when it comes to making reads at the line, looking at guys saying, all right, the corner's 10 yards off, let's do a quick screen and pick up 8. That's how he's really beating defenses at this point in his career. Of course, the arm is still great. Anticipation, the accuracy is all still there, but a lot of that is still upstairs. So the Achilles injury you don't want to see happen. But it's not like he's super reliant on his legs that it would completely derail next season if he came back and played.
The concern with me and Aaron Rodgers coming back to the Jets would be, is this an offensive line I want to play behind? At the age of, I'm going to be 40 years old at that point in time, is this what I want to put myself through? Zach Wilson was running for his life. On the lone drive that Aaron Rodgers played, he was pressured 3 times out of 4 snaps. And that one of those snaps was not a pressure because it was a run with Breece Hall. And we're going to talk about Breece Hall because, oh my goodness, God, he is unbelievable. He is unreal. But if I'm Aaron Rodgers, do I want to play behind this Jets offensive line? Unless you're doing something drastic to improve this. Like Lincoln Tomlinson was not good. Dwayne Brown was not that good tonight. Mekhi Becton was not that good tonight. The guys need to play better. They need to protect this quarterback. The only way that if I'm Aaron Rodgers, I decide to come back for one more year is two things. Let me say, not one, two. One, are you going to put the adequate people in position for me to succeed on this offensive line? And two, how do I feel? Do I feel like my normal self? Do I feel like I can push off my leg the same way? So I understand what you're saying. Modern medicine and Achilles, yes, it has been more calming on the fan for their, one of their guys where they're in a position to come back sooner rather than later from an Achilles injury. But at his age, I don't know if it's something that he doesn't want to put himself through because he was already contemplating retirement.
No, I agree with what you said. Listen, I think the only big time move that the Jets can make really is next off season going out and getting somebody like David Bakhtiari, who is his best friend. I think we need to make major improvements on the offensive line. But I just kind of find it, I understand the protection wasn't good, but ultimately, all weekend long, I've been seeing quarterbacks get sacked and get hit. It's just an unfortunate injury, man. It's really just unfortunate. This only happens to the Jets. This really only happens to the Jets. Really.
And I'm not here blaming the offensive line for Rodgers' injury. That would be very irresponsible of me. All I'm saying is he was running for his life prior to the injury. He was escaping. He was trying to his best to. His blind side was getting absolutely torched for the couple plays that he did play for. But it already was a concern prior to this game being started. And for it to immediately put a damper on the entire Jet season, it's super unfortunate and not at all what you wanted to see.
I just wish we got more of a sample size at it because it was one offensive drive. And after that, I was writing down some Jets moments, some of the worst Jets moments in history. 2012, week 12, the butt fumble game. We lose 19-49 on Thanksgiving. I was with my family that day, and I had to witness that. 2015, week 17, we lose 17-22. Fitzpatrick throws 3 interceptions to our former head coach and Rex Ryan, who beats us and knocks us out of the playoffs. And that year, we had Eric Decker, Brandon Marshall, 1,000-yard receivers. Our defense was like that. We had a chance to make some noise. Chris Ivory was great. 2019, Le'Veon Bell, C.J. Mosley. We make some signings. Sam Darnold, week 1. We're up on the Bills. We choke the game. Then Sam Darnold has mono. And then that very same year, week 7, I'm seeing ghost game happens, 4 interceptions. Last season, in the preseason, Zach Wilson almost tears his ACL. I thought he was going to be out for the year. He comes back, and we found out that he wasn't very good anyway. Now, what happened to Rodgers was one of the worst moments ever. It's going to get masked because we won this game, and now I'm kind of feeling good, but I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be crying about Aaron Rodgers being injured for the season.
The only other game I'd add in there is the 45-3 defeat we had to the Patriots in 2010. But it kind of made up because we beat them in the playoffs. But that loss was demoralizing.
Joel, I'll say this to you, and we'll talk about the Bills briefly, and then we'll let you go. But that video came from your heart. And it made me very, very sad for not just you, but of course all Jets fans, because you guys have had some terrible luck, like you just mentioned it. And there was finally some expectations. There's finally some silver linings to being a Jets fan. You finally got your answer at quarterback. That quarterback was the best quarterback that you've ever had in your building. And for you to not even experience a full drive, that is gutting. That is heartbreaking. And what you showed was a true display of being a fan, showing passion, showing emotion, showing something that you care about. And I say that because the reaction to some of the responses that you receive really just make me sick, because this is your life. You talk sports for a living. You are a Jets fan. You are a diehard Jets fan. You've gone through the mud. And for this to be the reality for Jets fans, I'm sure you are not alone in feeling as sad as you were. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick. But let's talk about the Buffalo Bills. The highlight of the Buffalo Bills night was a bad one. Josh Allen turning the ball over 4 times, 3 INTs, all of them to Jordan Whitehead. Just throws that just were careless, seemed as if Josh Allen was really just playing super lackadaisical, very carefree. Some of those throws, and then the fumble, an eradicated snap. He picks it up. He tries to make something out of nothing, gets blown up, fumbles the ball in a huge spot of the game where the Jets are able to run some clock, kick the field goal that would put them up 3 prior to the Bills going down and kicking a game-tying field goal. One that was very, very Mickey Mouse, one that just taps in and sends this game into overtime. But Joel, talk to me. What is your opinion? What do you feel that this Bills team's main issues are? Are you buying this long-term, or is the Jets defense just unbelievable?
The Jets defense is unbelievable, without a doubt. But this game was really almost carbon copy of what happened last year, where Josh Allen really wasn't able to make a lot of explosive plays. Like, the Jets were able, for the most part, to keep everything in front of them. There was no one getting beat over the top. There was no, 30, 40, 50-yard plays, bomb touchdowns to Gabe Davis or Stephon Diggs. Out of the 3 interceptions, I think there was only one that I don't really care about, which was a 3rd and 8, I want to say. And it looked like he could have rushed for a first down. Instead, he just threw it up, and it was basically an arm punt. The Jets intercepted it at like the 5. Breece ends up getting like an 80-yard rush after that. But to me, I was like, that's an arm punt. You get the ball at the 5-yard line on 3rd down when you would have punted. Okay, whatever. The other 2 weren't great, right? You had one where he's trying to find Stephon Diggs on, I want to say it was a post route. You had a safety come over, intercept it. And then he had another one with Gabe Davis on kind of a corner route. And they were, I forgot the announcers. I don't remember if I was watching the Manning cast at that time or if I was watching the regular broadcast, but they were basically pinning that interception on Gabe Davis. I thought Whitehead just made a good break on the ball. I mean, he maybe the ball was a little bit late coming out of Josh Allen's hands, and by the time Gabe Davis turned around, the ball should have been on him. But Whitehead, I thought, just made a great break on it. Offensively, this Bills team is still pretty reliant on Josh Allen. James Cook had 12 carries for 46 yards. He had a couple really explosive runs. He got bottled up a few times as well, though. There was nothing really huge there. Damian Harris wasn't really involved, neither Latavius Murray. It was Josh Allen going 29 for 41, 230 yards, averaging 6 yards an attempt. This Jets defense is suffocating. Like, they're not going to let you just do whatever you want. They're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to shut down the run. And even though Stephon Diggs had 100 yards, unless it's just me, it didn't feel like an overly impactful 100 yards outside of a couple catches he had on that last drive.
Was dominating.
The last drive for sure. But outside that last drive, it didn't feel like Stephon Diggs was dominating this game like a typical 100-yard game would have felt like. So the Bills always felt like, even coming into this season and even last season, they always just felt like a tick below their opponent, regardless of if it was going up against the Bengals in the playoffs where they kind of got blown out, or when it's a divisional game against the Jets or the Dolphins where on paper they probably have a better team, but for whatever reason, once the lights come on Sunday, they just don't show up how they should, or at least how we're expecting them to. So I was hoping, well, I shouldn't say I was hoping, but you were hoping as a Bills fan that maybe this year things could change. And of course, week 1, you're on the road in New York. You were favored by 2 points. It was a toss-up game, but you were not expecting Josh Allen to turn the ball over 4 times. And once Rodgers went down, you're saying, oh, this is a free win. We get a free divisional road win in New York, and then you blew it. So for the Bills, it really just feels like more of the same.
This was an odd week for quarterbacks. Joe Burrow had his worst career game. Jalen Hurts didn't play well against the Patriots. Lamar Jackson didn't have a great game against the Texans. Patrick Mahomes didn't have a great game, and you can pin that on the receivers. But even watching the game,
the only elite quarterback to play well was Tua Tagovailoa.
Even when you look back at the game, I thought Mahomes missed a plethora of throws. I thought he wasn't his usual self. I didn't think he was that good in that game. This one, Josh Allen, I mean, almost every single top-end quarterback didn't play well. Even Trevor Lawrence, he had some amazing throws versus Indianapolis, but you could have asked for more. The Bills, I think their major problem is that they don't have a explosive playmaker on the outside of Stephon Diggs. The first interception, you're right. You can say it's an arm punt, but he did have a lot of space to get the first down there. I still don't think that was a good decision. The second interception, 100% on him. Stephon Diggs, double coverage on a post. The third interception, I actually am going to pin that on Gabe Davis because Jordan Whitehead had inside leverage. Gabe Davis is supposed to run a route that threatens the outside, the middle of the field. So Jordan Whitehead can at least respect it. but he didn't do any of that. Jordan Whitehead televised that route perfectly. Josh Allen threw it a little bit inside, but that's the issue with this Bills offense, that outside of Stephon Diggs, there is no playmaker that can run crisp routes and that can threaten the defense consistently. So you really are relying on Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs to be this entire offense. I think the rushing offense was pretty good today. All they need to be is efficient, because we know this team's going to be a pass heavy team. But that's the major problem with the Bills. I don't even know if Dalton Kincaid got a catch today. I didn't even see him make any plays. Did he have just one? He just had one or two.
Four for 26.
Four for 26. Okay, that was invisible to me. Maybe it's because I was mourning Rodgers news for half the game, but who knows? Really, the Bills lack that explosive playmaker. I thought their defensive line played well. Granted, it is the Jets' offensive line, but Leonard Floyd was a huge addition. Greg Rousseau was good. When they get Von Miller back, they'll be better. I thought the most impressive defender on the field for the Bills, though, was Matt Milano. I was scared for a second that Zach Wilson was going to be off the field with a concussion when Milano laid that hit on him kind of in that third quarter. So there were positives for the Bills, but the major takeaway is that Josh Allen has to take care of the ball better, which I think he's capable of doing. But for some reason, every so often you have these games from Josh Allen, but this is who Josh Allen is. If you look at the playoffs and back in 2021, when he was perfect, that playoff run, he was perfect, but in the regular season, he had a plethora of stinkers. So this is kind of who Josh Allen is. You just got to take the highs with the lows with him as a quarterback.
You mentioned that hit on Zach Wilson. That definitely should have been a 15-yard penalty, but also something I want to talk about. When Zach Wilson threw that INT to Matt Milano, he laid the boom on Milano. He absolutely put him to the dirt.
He got a penalty. Yeah.
No, he was talking his shit because obviously he intercepted the ball. You could talk your shit then, but Zach laid him out. He popped him. But to talk about the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, I don't know, man. I didn't love what I saw from Josh Allen. Even that arm punt still. Make something happen. Why are you just going to accept a turnover on your stat sheet? I'm watching and I just feel like Josh Allen's carefree. He's one of those. It's like, oh, okay, it is what it is. I threw it up to Stephon Diggs, who you're not too wrong about that quiet 100. It just happened to be that 40 yards was in that last drive. He dominated that last drive.
That's probably why I'm thinking it's a quiet 100, because it was 60 up until the last drive. Yeah,
it's also a lot of those yards and receptions didn't equal points. The Bills barely scored in this game, so it didn't feel like it was that impactful.
But the Jets were getting constant pressure on Josh Allen, making him at least rushing throws, making him feel very uncomfortable the entire game. But I don't know. I feel as if I'm tired of giving Josh Allen that excuse. Understanding that, yes, you do have Stephon Diggs. Your offensive line's not that good. You're playing alongside Gabe Davis as your number 2, who we all can agree you need an upgrade at the wide receiver position. I like James Cook. I think he could have been a little bit more efficient, but we saw some flashes. Understanding that it is the Jets defense, an elite unit. I think that he had a solid game for his first time as the full go starter, got involved in the pass game, something that I love, that I really want to note, because he is going to be a safety blanket for Josh, something that was very, very nice to see, especially as someone who believes in James Cook long-term for the Buffalo Bills. But overall, Josh Allen has to be better. I get that this Jets defense is elite. It will be amongst one of the best defenses in the National Football League, but Josh Allen can't be so carefree. I can give him a pass only so much. Losing this game, understanding that you had every advantage. Sometimes the Bills kind of just take their foot off the gas. We saw that against Miami last year, where people were giving Josh Allen the benefit of the doubt for being in such a close game against Miami because they kind of just cruised and they didn't take their opponent serious. Well, they kind of did the same thing again tonight, and it cost them a W. But credit to the Jets, credit to Zach Wilson for coming in and doing a job. End of the day, they're all professionals, and they acted as such tonight. I want to give nothing but praise to the New York Jets. Joel, is there something you want to say before you go?
Listen, all I want to say is make sure all 585 people in this live stream right now click the like button and make sure y'all stay on, because These two fellas are going to be answering questions about fantasy. These two fantasy experts will be answering questions about your lineups, who to pick up on the waiver wire, all that other good stuff. So listen, just tune in to the experts because I'm going to be tuned in. I won 3 of my leagues today. Quiet, humble brag. Aaron Rodgers starting in one of them hurt me in one of my leagues. But listen, I'm off to a good start in fantasy. Hopefully all you guys in the comments are off to a good start as well. But make sure you guys keep tuning into the Fantasy Reaction Show.
All right, brother. Be good.
Last thing I want to say about the Bills real quick and this offense, why is nothing's easy? Like nothing with this Bills offense came easy. Like even the completions is like Josh Allen scrambling, fucking sidearm between 2 defenders and Stephon. Like it just felt like there was nothing that was really wide open in this game. Even the Stephon Diggs catch on DJ Reed, he turned DJ Reed around, but by the time the ball got there, DJ Reed was on his back.
Like DJ Reed had a great game.
Yeah, whether it's the play calling, the scheme, maybe it's Allen missing reads, but it just felt like nothing came easy for this Bills offense. Even if it was just like a 3-yard rush, just felt like an accomplishment because you're just getting hit every single time you get the ball. So I think that would go a long way, obviously, as it would for any offense. That maybe if they get some easy completions, right? Maybe if you get that big play down the field that sets you up in scoring range. But it was hard to watch because the Jets were really all over everything.
And I get it. You can't just constantly abuse the same thing over and over again. But it gets to a point where that last drive was essentially the mindset that the Bills should have gone with that entire game. Who's going to stop Stephon Diggs on this New York Jets defense? The answer was no one. By himself, he basically drove the Bills down that field. And that offensive pass interference, I already spoke about it. I don't want to see that. Sauce got the benefit of the doubt when that's normal hand play with a wide receiver and a cornerback. But understanding that is your elite weapon, you need to do everything in your power to get him the football. There needs to be more plays drawn up for Stephon Diggs to get open and in space. And now that we're transferring over into the fantasy mindset of things, Josh Allen, not that great. You already mentioned it, 236 yards, a touchdowns, 3 INTs. That's -6, plus a fumble. That's another -4. He really wasn't that much of a threat rushing the football today either. I will say he needs to slide, bro. If you're in dynasty leagues and you're watching him every single time he's rushing that football, he needs to learn how to slide. He's a maniac. He goes out there and he's looking for contact.
He tried to jump over 3 defenders. He was 5 yards short of the first down marker.
Like, dude, I get it. You are a one-of-one athlete at the quarterback position. You have a body type like no other quarterback has. You have a skill set like very few have. But please slide. You have a long career ahead of you, but you are trying to shorten it more and more by doing stuff like that. As fans, we tip your cap. But as someone that's looking out, please, Josh, start to slide. Talking about this game continuously, James Cook, 12 carries, 46 yards, 3.8 a carry. Not the most efficient, but in the pass game, very interesting. 4 receptions, 17 yards. No doubt. You see it, like I mentioned earlier. Like I mentioned earlier, he is going to be a huge safety blanket for Josh Allen. It's just great to see them get this connection very early on. Stephon Diggs continues his dominance, 10 receptions, 102 yards, and a touchdown. It came very easy to him to this game. And I get it. A lot of that came in that last drive, but that's just who Stephon Diggs is. Absolutely. On the Jets side of the ball, you lose Aaron Rodgers for the season. If you are in a position that you need a quarterback, tune into our next episode. We're going to be going over guys that you should be able to stream. It's a little bit too early. Maybe we'll drop just a quick 10, 15-minute waiver wire episode midweek just so you guys can get some streaming options because we understand losing a quarterback week 1 before they even are able to finish a drive, especially if you're in 2 QB leagues, that's absolutely brutal.
The biggest loser, honestly, on this Jets team is Garrett Wilson. I mean, the numbers are staggering when it's with Zach Wilson and without Zach Wilson. I mean, Mike White and Joe Flacco were giving Garrett Wilson wide receiver 1 games. Zach Wilson's not doing that. It's the unfortunate reality that if you drafted Garrett Wilson probably to be your wide receiver 1, maybe your wide receiver 2, but he was going in that middle to end of the second round. Some people were taking him at the beginning of the second round over guys like A.J. Brown, over guys like CeeDee Lamb. The reality is he's probably going to be a boomer bust wide receiver 2. In this game, he had 5 targets. 5 receptions, 34 yards, and a touchdown. Like he has a special ability that anytime he touches the ball, he can make a big play happen. But with the quarterback like Zach Wilson, who's for the most part wildly inaccurate and hasn't been able to show that he can consistently throw the ball down the field, on top of that, you have a coaching staff who does not trust him one bit, not even the slightest bit. Once they had that fumble at the end of the fourth quarter, it was run. Even in my head, I was like, they better not drop back to pass. I don't care. I don't care if it's a bootleg where Zach could just slide and he doesn't have to throw it. Do not let this man get the ball. I say it with all due respect, Zach. But the reality is Garrett Wilson takes a big hit here. The other receivers no one's really looking at. Allen Lazard, McCole Hardman didn't even play. Randall Cobb got 1 target. But, I mean, the big story from the Jets side, it's Breece Hall, right? I think anyone who drafted him, you were saying, listen, the first month of the season might be a wash. It might take him to that second half till he really becomes the guy and he's the workhorse. Now, Dalvin Cook outsnapped him. I'm assuming. I don't have the numbers. I'm assuming he outsnapped him. He had more carries in this game. But Breece Hall had 10 carries for 127 yards. And then he also has a catch for 20 yards. He had 11 touches and put up 147 yards of offense. That goes to show you Breece Hall, week 2, he's in your starting lineup. He just needs 10 touches. If he gets 10 touches, he might be at RB1. So as the season goes on, he's going to get more work. He'll eventually be the workhorse for this team with Dalvin Cook, working in. But if you're a Breece Hall owner, man, you got to be over the moon. You thought this was going to take maybe a month, 4 weeks. Week 2, it's ready to start. Let's go.
Here's the thing. I'm with you. Garrett Wilson does take a hit because you had the idea that Aaron Rodgers was going to be his quarterback. You were expecting, like a lot of people, him to be in that category of dark horse offensive player of the year. Garrett Wilson's different. Even with Zach Wilson, he was able to make a special play. And we saw last year with a crapshoot of quarterbacks, he was still able to put up over 1,100 yards and still be one of the more fantasy relevant guys that there was at the position. So I'm not going to count him out yet. But, of course, he does take a hit. But one of those guys that you keep in your lineup regardless because of special plays like we saw today. And that is going to be a candidate for catch of the year, and it's week 1. Absolutely, for lack of a better term, to bitch Trey White and to hold on to that ball, that takes he has an unbelievable amount of skill at the wide receiver position. And I get it, Zach Wilson isn't the ideal quarterback situation, but he's shown in the past that he can still be fantasy relevant with mediocre to below mediocre quarterback play. To talk about Breece, that was my dark horse candidate to be the running back 1 on the season, and it was on full display today, unlimited snaps. He's special. And once he gets his legs underneath him, he's breaking one of those, that long 83-yard rush to the crib. He's that special. He's that type of running back. He has the dual threat capabilities to be a receiving back as well. We saw some of that tonight also. But I want to give some love to Dalvin. Dalvin, who really made the most of his opportunities, obviously didn't look as efficient, as dominant as Breece did. But coming in, obviously didn't have the full training camp with the New York Jets, was able to come in and did a fine job, if you ask me, truthfully.
And the one thing before we go over to studs and duds, Garrett Wilson. I'm going to list off some names. Tell me rest of season, who would you rather have? Now, we probably have 10 guys or so. Like, I'm not going to name the Jettas and Chases. Those are obvious. Would you rather have Cooper Kupp or Garrett Wilson?
With the idea that I'm unsure of what's going to happen with Kupp, understanding that Matthew Stafford looked unbelievable to start the season yesterday, I'm going to say out of respect for the fact that he's healthy, I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson.
I'm assuming you'd prefer these guys as well. Amon-Ra, Waddle, Olave, all over.
No doubt. I'm all going those guys over Garrett.
That's what I figured. How about Smitty?
I'm going Smitty as well.
Debo?
That's probably where I lean Garrett. Debo did have a solid game. There's just so many mouths to feed. We even saw Ayuk was the wide receiver 1 very easily yesterday against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So I probably lean Garrett, but it's probably closer than what I'm giving respect to right now.
What about Calvin Ridley?
I'm going Calvin, bro. He looked unbelievable. He's going to be in our studs later. He was unreal.
What about DK?
Last year, it was even close with the same situation, Zach Wilson and obviously Joe Flacco too. I'm going Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson has that upside of being the only true wide receiver one on his offense. You still have to respect Tyler Lockett. JSN played a lot more snaps than what we were anticipating, although he didn't have that much production. Nobody did really on that Seahawks offense. Metcalf did get into the end zone, but overall, it was a disappointing day. So I'm going to go with Garrett.
So we're looking at, I didn't name about like 10, 12 names. So we're looking at Garrett between wide receiver 14 and 17-ish the rest of the way. So that's low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. He has the ability to, say, I'm quarterback proof. I could do it all. But I do think that if you have, I don't think anyone's going out there and trading for Garrett Wilson. So it's very hard for you right after this Rodgers news as a fantasy owner to go out and try to, go and get a Chris Olave or a Waddle, wherever it might be. It might be pretty difficult to do that. But who knows? A couple of weeks from now, Garrett Wilson might be able to put up some numbers, and we could go from there. But right now, the trade value is too low to try to move off him.
Last year in half point, he was 19th. In full PPR, he was 21st. 83 receptions last year, 1,103 yards. He just lacked the touchdowns, and that's why he wasn't in that top 15 echelon. Only 4 touchdowns. But, hey, getting on the board early on. It's unfortunate the situation that the Jets have to go through, but you respect the skill set that both Garrett Wilson has and, of course, Breece Hall. These are 2 guys you have to keep in your lineup regardless. So, Joel, I'll start with you with your studs. Talk to me about your stud quarterback, and we'll talk about the duds a little bit later, but let's stay on a high note.
So 2 stud quarterbacks I have here. First one I'm going to start off with Anthony Richardson, Colts quarterback. Now, look. If you go through all of the top scorers from fantasy of week 1, and we're right there with you, man. In our main league, me and Drew do, that's the league I care about the most. I scored the second most points this week and lost. I had J.K. Dobbins. I had Aaron Jones. I had Joe Burrow. So I see you guys in the comments saying all this shit like, oh, I lost because of X, Y, and Z. We're right there with you. We're playing in these leagues. We're pulling our hair out whenever some bullshit doesn't go our way. And week 1 really didn't go your way unless you had Tua or Tyreek Hill. Because everyone else felt like even the QB2 on the week outside Tua is probably like 20% less than the average of last year if you were to just take a guess. But Anthony Richardson this past week, 24 of 37, 230 yards, 2 total touchdowns. But the number that's most important, 10 rushing attempts for 40 yards. Coming into this season, the draft process as well, as we were talking about, just regular football, but it was always about rushing attempts if you wanted to see the upside with Anthony Richardson. And everyone assumed that he would get enough to be fantasy, relevant. And he was going as high as like QB12, QB10 in a lot of leagues. He was going over guys like Tua and Daniel Jones, who have proven in previous years to be really good fantasy quarterbacks. But the fact that he got that 10 rushing attempts, that tells me all I need to know. Even though it was only 40 yards, that's all I need to know. He got that rushing touchdown in the red zone. They got no problem. Shane Steichen just had a whole year with Jalen Hurts. He knows what to do around the red zone, and Anthony Richardson's a bigger version of Jalen Hurts. According to 33rd Team, who website, they do rankings, articles, they're a great site. Since 2016, there have been 3 rookie quarterbacks that finished as a QB1, Kyler, Dak, Justin Herbert. All of them average at least 3.5 rushing attempts. Very difficult. We say it all the time, very difficult for veteran quarterbacks who are just pocket passers, like a guy like Aaron Rodgers, for example. It's hard for them to be top-end fantasy quarterbacks with that rushing ability. But Anthony Richardson, with that upside, I think he could be a top 10, 12 quarterback. And my other stud is someone that I was hyping up all offseason, really, on pick a side. But for fantasy, I kept it very low-key because I knew in our league, I wanted him, but I didn't want anyone to know I want him. That was Brock Purdy. He was my favorite QB2 to target amongst all of my leagues. I must have him in 6 leagues. Last season, Purdy took over in weeks 13 to 18. He's quarterback 9 in fantasy football. 3 finishes in the top 10, never worse than quarterback 18. And this offseason, nothing changes. He was always the starter. It was never Trey Lance. It was never Sam Darnold. There's no weapons leaving. There's no coaching change. And he was being drafted as quarterback 19. It never made sense to me. You don't have to love Brock Purdy, the quarterback. You don't have to love his talent. But the truth of the matter is this is going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. This is a team that's constantly going to be in the red zone. It's a team that's constantly going to be scoring touchdowns. Every game last year, Brock Purdy had 2+ touchdowns except the game he got hurt. I mean, that's the type of guy that Brock Purdy is for fantasy. He's going to be able to give you that 250 yards and 2 touchdowns and give you that anywhere from QB 18 all the way up to maybe QB 8 or 9. Does he have the upside to be QB 3 on the week? Unlikely. But for a guy that was going probably undrafted in 1 quarterback leagues and going in maybe double-digit rounds in 2 quarterback leagues, I think he is arguably the most safe quarterback to in all of fantasy football.
And taking fantasy football aside, Pat P called him out. He said, I'm getting an interception this week. And Purdy did not shy away from throwing at Pat P. Ayuk caught a touchdown on Pat Pete's head top. Purdy, you could say a lot of things about him. He's not scared of the moment. He doesn't fear no man. Credit to Brock Purdy. He put up a solid week. You mentioned a QB9 on the week. I'll give my stud, and then we can get into the duds. But, of course, you know one of the studs, the stud, Tua Tagovailoa, QB1 on the week, 466 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Did turn the ball over twice, 1 interception, which was pass interference that was not called. That Braxton Berrios got pushed egregiously in the back. They didn't call it. And then the fumble lost at the line of scrimmage, which was unfortunate on their opening drive because they were just moving that ball. But my Lord have mercy, this guy Tua is special. And when you ask me, do I think that Tua is an elite quarterback, a fringe elite quarterback? The answer is absolutely 100% yes. Going up against his counterpart, draft counterpart, I should say, in Justin Herbert, and outdueling Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert had a solid game himself. Wheels kind of fell off of the offense in that second half, in that fourth quarter. But my goodness, Tua, the throws that he was making, the confidence that he showed in himself, the ability to hit the throws on the sideline, to hit the deep ball. I mean, this guy is going to be fantasy relevant for you every single week because he is a part of one of the best offense and could arguably be considered the best offense in the National Football League, alongside Tyreek Hill, who we're going to talk about later, Jalen Waddle, who had himself a solid game. Run game was definitely a very useful part of the Miami offense. That might be due to the fact that the Chargers couldn't stop a nosebleed, but my God, what a unbelievably well-executed offensive game by the Dolphins. And number 2, definitely not a guy that I was looking to talk about today on our show. Mac Jones, what a performance that he put forth against the Philadelphia Eagles. 35 of 54, 316 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 INT. Finished as your quarterback 2 on the week against a solid Philadelphia Eagles team. He had some very impressive throws. Hunter Henry, who really looked very solid. Kendrick Bourne looked very good, but Mac Jones seemed very confident in that pocket, is going to be one of those guys that I don't know if I feel confident with him in obviously 1 quarterback leagues, but if I'm desperate, if I had an Aaron Rodgers scenario, unfortunately, and I'm streaming because right now I'm looking at our league and Mac Jones is available. He's one of those guys that I'm contemplating spending a decent amount of fab on because of the fact of he has guys that you really don't overly respect, but going against that Philadelphia defense that is legit. And to put up the statistics that he put up this past weekend, it's something that you have to give credit to and respect.
I was on the last show or the first show we did. Tua was my dark horse to be QB1 on the season. Not only is Tua in this offense just explosive is not even the word. If you have Tua on your team or Waddle or Tyreek, you just have to love Mike McDaniel. Right, like he goes. Was it Tyreek has the big play down the sideline? I forgot what exactly play, but whatever. They're on like the 1 yard line. They just had a big play, and damn near every other coach in the league is handing the ball off to get a rushing touchdown. And he does play action wide open. I wasn't even talking about the fade.
Oh,
fade
got it. Too. I know which one you're talking
play
about.
Action. I don't know if it's a tight end.
Facts to the tight end, of course.
Yeah,
correct.
Where it's like every other coach is calling a run there. He's like, nah, let's do play action. Just get to us some more points.
I mean, Mike McDaniel and Tua just have an unbelievable relationship, and Mike McDaniel is going to do everything he can to put Tua in a great spot to succeed. And obviously, you know, we can talk very bluntly. Yeah, Tua was definitely throwing receivers open, but there was also scenarios where these wide receivers were just wide open in space. The Chargers defense were being very generous, and Tua is not one of those quarterbacks that you can do that to. He's going to take advantage. It was personal, and he showed out, and he did his thing. I'll talk about my dud first, and then we can get into yours because there's no bigger dud this weekend than Joe Burrow. Let's be fair to the guy. He did play in some crazy conditions, but on the other side, Deshaun Watson didn't have himself such a bad game, but geez, nothing could go right for this Bengals offense. Credit to the Browns defense. They really did an unbelievable job. I believe they had the highest percent of perfectly covered plays on the defensive side of the ball this past weekend. An unbelievable performance being put forth by Jim Schwartz and company. But 82 yards, 45.2 completion percentage, no touchdowns, no INTs, no fumbles. Just not what you were expecting out of this game at all. Nothing in regards to fantasy was relevant with the Cincinnati Bengals. You look forward to better weeks from the Bengals. They started out slow last season on week 1 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Joe Burrow threw what was it? Four INTs, 3 INTs?
Yeah, last year, yeah.
So it's, let's not say it's a trend, but back-to-back years, week 1 don't go according to plan. Let's not panic, but we have to acknowledge a bad performance when we see a bad performance. But he's one of those guys you're still throwing out confidently as your QB1, especially in 2 QB leagues. You're not even thinking twice about it. But in those 1 QB leagues, you still send out Joe Burrow because you drafted him with relatively high pick for him to give high quarterback 1 output.
Gets the Ravens next week. They're at home, 1:00 game.
Yeah,
so
not ideal.
Really get
not
easier.
Not an ideal matchup by any means.
No, my QB dud was also my sit of the week this past week. Daniel Jones. And listen, I know I've been a little wishy-washy when it comes to Daniel Jones at times. I
like
can't even blame him for this. I can't even blame Daniel Jones for the experience he had to endure on Sunday Night Football. Mark Lewinsky, you allowed 9 pressures and 3 sacks.
Trash.
Evan Neal, 8 pressures and a sack. The left side wasn't great either. You know, you had Andrew Thomas allowed a few pressures before going down. He has a hamstring injury, which I don't know the severity of it yet, but not ideal.
Pray for twin.
In total pressures, 25 total pressures on 28 pass attempts. Daniel Jones legitimately never had a chance to do anything with the football. This was a game that you look up at the end of the first quarter, you blink, and it's 16-0, and the Cowboys have fucking dominated this game. So Daniel Jones is someone I was kind of low-key trying to get in leagues. I didn't get him a lot of places because he has the rushing ability to be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He was QB9 last year, even though he didn't have a ton of like blow-up games. But this is a week that you chalk it up as you can't win them all. You know, thankfully they're not going up against the Dallas Cowboys every week. I'm expecting Brian Daboll to get into the lab and figure something out because even though going forward, the competition, like they have Arizona next week, you're not going to go up against that, highly touted of a defensive line. But the offensive line was so bad that it makes me think, even if you're going up against an average defensive line, I don't know how great I feel about this offense. So you still, of course, have Saquon. You start him. Daniel Jones against a great matchup in Arizona. I'm comfortable starting him. Darren Waller, again, in a great matchup. I'm comfortable starting him. But if they weren't going up against Arizona, I'd be telling you to sit Daniel Jones and Waller. Of course, you play Saquon. But if the matchup wasn't so juicy, that's the type of, just a little bit of I'm pulling the heartstrings. I believe in Daboll, but also this offensive line could be so bad that it could just bring everything down.
Evan Neal is going to go down as one of the worst top 10 picks in the last 10, 15 years. Yeah. I mean, honest to God, this guy really has just been terrible. Last year, he was not great by any means. He was actually horrific. And then to start this season, it really doesn't get worse than that. Glowinski, oh my, Evan Neal played bad, but Glowinski's found a way to play worse. I mean, truthfully, there was never a time where I felt confident with this Giants offense outside of maybe like the first 6 plays where none of them were passing and they were just running the football. Saquon looked great. Daniel Jones got out in play action. He was making things happen with his legs. And then the missed snap happened. They go and they miss the field goal. It gets taken back for a touchdown. And that's it. The game was caked. Daniel Jones never stood a chance. The rain was horrendous. The game was really hard to watch. And it was a defense that, even when you told me that Daniel Jones was your sit of the week, I understood. The Cowboys defense is fantastic. It will be one of the best units in the National Football League. It will be the Niners, it'll be the Jets, and it'll be the Cowboys right there, in my opinion, as the top 3 defenses in the league. Hey, maybe we'll start to throw some respect on the Browns also. I feel like time has to tell. Division matchup, we'll see what happens with them. But, definitely one we're keeping on the radar. But Micah Parsons, what he did to that Giants offensive line and Daniel Jones was just downright mean. 7 sacks. leading the league and giving up sacks for that Giants offensive line. Not a matchup that I loved. A matchup that people thought that I was ducking the podcast for. I fell asleep, and this is what I wake up to at 2:30 in the morning. Not something I wanted to see, but obviously I am expecting better for those New York Giants, especially Daniel Jones. Hey, people that have Daniel Jones agendas, they're getting their jokes out now. Oh, you paid this guy $160 million for what? Hey, not a great week, not a great way to start the season, not even a little bit. But I fully expect, especially in not torrential downpour, for this offense to play significantly better, especially against teams that aren't going to be anywhere near the talent level of the Dallas Cowboys. Joel, talk to me. Your running back standouts. Give me your 2 studs this weekend.
This one was a shocker to me. I thought going into this season, Cam Akers had a chokehold on the LA Rams backfield. I thought he's the workhorse. They got Kyren Williams and Zach Evans back there. Who else is going to get the ball? And it was Kyren Williams. That's who got the ball. Kyren Williams, 15 rushing attempts, 22 for Cam Akers, right? So when you first look at that, you're saying, well, Akers had more attempts. But then you look at the numbers and you're saying, oh, shit, Cam Akers turned 22 attempts into 29 yards. Kyren Williams at least turned his 15 into 52 and 2 touchdowns. But the most interesting thing was, and shout out to Not Jay Daigle on Twitter, Daigle, did a breakdown on a lot of running backs and snaps and stuff like that. Kyren out-touched Cam Akers 14-11 until the Rams took a 24-13 lead. Fourth quarter, 10-9 minutes left. But after that, Akers had 11 carries to Kyren's 1 within the last 9 minutes of the game. On top of that, Kyren Williams ran 30 routes to Akers 4. So when you first look at this box score, it might look like kind of a 50-50 split between these two guys. But it was really just Cam Akers, when the game was more or less over, was getting a lot of carries, didn't do anything with them. And then the routes run, which is extremely important in fantasy football. We talk all the time that receptions are more valuable than rush attempts are. The fact that Kyron's out there running 30 routes and Cam Akers only has 4, I'm sure Kyren Williams went undrafted in your league. He's probably sitting there on the waiver wire. If you had a guy like J.K. Dobbins, if you had someone like Aaron Jones, talking about my fucking team right now, where you might need to start a running back right now, he's the starter. Like, I know we don't want to admit it because a lot of people, me included, really like Cam Akers, but it appears that Kyren is the starter. So if you're desperate for a starting running back, he's someone that if you have to spend 25 or 30% of your fab because Dobbins is done for the year and Aaron Jones maybe misses a week or two, I'm okay doing that to get a starting running back in my lineup.
I feel like this is a good.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, go
All
ahead,
right. I feel like this is a good opportunity to briefly talk about the Rams and the output that they put forth, because I don't know if we're going to show them that much love, the love that they deserve. Matthew Stafford going out there, throwing for over 300 yards, didn't find the end zone because of, you mentioned Kyren Williams getting into the end zone twice, but to throw for 300 yards, to also service 2 wide receivers in Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell.
We'll talk about him later.
Oh, okay. To both have over 100 yards receiving on the game. A credit to Sean McVay, a credit to Matthew Stafford, and of course, credit to Puka and Tutu. But really, an unbelievable offensive output. A game that I don't think anybody had the Rams winning, and for them to win it in dominating fashion on the road, it is something that is going to be looked at very, very closely, because ultimately we know who Matthew Stafford is. We know who Sean McVay is, and he is doing this while supporting guys that we're talking about, a rookie and Nacua, and we're talking about Tutu Atwell, who really has just been,
it's been a bust.
He's been nothing special by any means. And this is without Cooper Kupp, that Matthew Stafford is putting up these unbelievable numbers. But go ahead. I just wanted to give some
line
love.
that's patchwork. That's rookies and
zero sacks given up. That was crazy.
Just to show how bad Akers was, he had negative 41 rushing yards over expectation, which was like 20 yards more than, or I guess 20 yards worse than the second worst, which I think was like Rachaad White. My other stud was your RB1 on this week. Yeah, he outplayed Breece Hall. Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was one of my favorite values in fantasy drafts this year, going around the 4th, 5th round. You could get him as your RB2 pretty easily. A lot of people were worried with Aaron Rodgers leaving, Jordan Love coming in, because a lot of Aaron Jones' work was through the passing game. A lot of it was checkdowns. a lot of it was manufactured touches too, like screens and swing routes, stuff like that. So people were worried that without Aaron Rodgers, will Jordan Love utilize him in the same way? And although it's only been one game and he did get hurt, which fingers crossed, hamstring injury, never ideal. He had 4 targets and really just 2.5 quarters of play. I think that's a great sign for Aaron Jones going forward. He had a manufactured screen where Jordan Love rolls out to the left, throws it back to the right, had a big 30, 40-yard play. He had a Texas route out of the backfield where Jordan Love hits him in stride, takes it for a touchdown. And he was the lead back as well over A.J. Dillon. At the end of last season, Dillon was getting very similar. They were basically 50-50 down the middle in terms of rush attempts. Aaron Jones has always been the pass catcher in that backfield. But I still think as long as he's healthy with Jordan Love out there, he's going to be utilized. He is the best receiving option that they have, at least most consistent, with Christian Watson not being able to stay in the field right now. I know we like Romeo Doubs.
You're not a Romeo Doubs guy, bro?
Touchdowns. We like Romeo Doubs. But Aaron Jones, I think, is going to be the safety net for Jordan Love. I think you're going to see multiple games where he could have 3, 4, 5, 6 receptions. And I think he's on his way if he can stay healthy to a top 10 fantasy finish.
I don't disagree, man. Aaron Jones was always one of those guys that I love going into this draft, a guy that you can get in that 4th, 5th round, and understanding that he's been one of the most safe fantasy players that there's been over these last couple of seasons. A safety blanket really just – it does not go unnoticed, and Aaron Jones is that for the Green Bay Packers, and he was phenomenal this past weekend. But, of course, I see you guys in the comments section talking about Tyler Algier. Where's the love for Tyler? Of course, we had to shine some light on him. The fact that he was the number 4 running back this week, with Bijan also being a top 10 running back in the same game, it speaks to how versatile and dominant this Falcons rush offense will be. And we kind of had this preconceived notion that Tyler Algier wasn't just going to go away. We kind of gave truth to Kyle Pitts and Drake London being the 3rd and 4th option in this offense because of how much they rely on the run. Tyler Algier, for him to get 75 yards on 15 attempts, average 5 a carry, he played I believe he had 56% of snaps, so he did out-snap Bijan Robinson. Bijan, who looked great in his own right. We can definitely give him some love. But this Falcons rush offense is going to be like this the entire season. It's going to be a 1A, 1B because Tyler Algier is just not one of those guys that's going to fade away. And I say 1A, 1B because the primary rusher is going to be Tyler. But the fact that Bijan is as versatile as he is, I believe he had 6 receptions, and his touchdown, his first touchdown of his NFL career, is one of the nicest touchdowns you're ever going to see a rookie have. Him kind of just hit that backstep, hit a quick juke, and just burst through the gap, the small gap that was, and get into the end zone. Bijan doing Bijan things. But this offense, this rush offense, is going to be fun. And Tyler Algier, who probably was one of the last picks in your fantasy drafts, of unbelievable value there. My second stud has to be Joshua Kelly. I don't think any one of us saw this coming, having Eckler be a top 10 finish and also Joshua Kelly be a top 10 finish. 16 carries, 91 yards, super efficient, 5.7 a carry, and get into the end zone. That was very shocking for me. I understand that Miami's defense isn't great by any means, and the Chargers were able to just rush all over them. But for them to have 2 top 10 guys also was definitely not on my bingo card, but someone that we have to acknowledge and give that respect to.
I see the real Tempest is commenting. He says he has Bijan and Tyler Algier. Does he trade one or just say F it and play both?
I think we wait another week. I mean, you could probably sell as high as it is right now, but understanding how great this Falcons rush offense is and can be, I think that you wait a week, wait 2 maybe, see if both of them continue to be fantasy relevant, both of them continue to share the workload that we did see this past Sunday, and maybe you get higher value than what it is right now, or you see that you can start both. We've seen it in the past that both are startable. Right now, I look at Javonte and P. Ryan as someone that you could start if you really are in a pinch. I look at in the history of fantasy football, we had Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara be 2 fantasy studs. So that's just one unbelievable extreme with Kamara and Ingram, and then one super low key, like a Dalvin and a Breece. It's like those are 2 startable guys right there. Tyler Algier and Bijan also just happen to be involved in one of the best rush offenses in the NFL. So maybe you wait a week, maybe you wait 2 weeks to see their true value. But I can understand your logic if you decide to move off them. I wouldn't, given this week
And
1.
how would you rank Algier, Kyron Williams, Josh Kelly? Austin Eckler is also dealing with an ankle injury. They said his status is in question for week 2. Obviously, if Austin Eckler's out, of course, Josh Kelly start him. But going forward, how would you rank Algier, Kelly, and Kyron?
Definitely Algier 1 for the fact that I respect that Falcons rush offense a ton. If Eckler's going to be hurt, he's just going to see a ton of volume. That's just what happens when you are the running back for the Chargers. They don't really, it doesn't seem to me as if they believe in a committee. But that's also for the fact that Eckler is one of the most dominant at the running back positions. But I'm going to go Kelly and then Kieran, just because maybe for both these guys, I need to see it for another week. But Joshua Kelly was super efficient. And he also did happen to get into the end zone too. I also just trust in that Chargers offense a little bit more than the Rams. And that's no slight. It's just that there's more talent on the Chargers and it's going to be more open field for a guy like Joshua Kelly.
I think I would have Kyron at 2 and Kelly 3. Just because Kyron could be the starting running back on the Rams, and Josh Kelly, even though he had a good game, it's Austin Eckler's backfield. We all know that.
No doubt. If it's also, of course, that is what I'm taking into account, depending on Eckler's situation. But of course, if Kelly gets the nod as the one for multiple weeks, I guess the long term, I'm with you. Kyron definitely seems to have that long term value. But in terms of who can give you more fantasy output on a week to week basis, in a short term, I'm going with Joshua. But my dud was my sit of the week also. Jamal Williams, who had the 6th most attempts this past weekend and was only able to muster up 2.5 a carry. It was really a rough go about for him. That Titans defensive line is the real deal. They made Derek Carr's life very, very difficult. The fact that they were able to still get away with the W is a credit to that defense, and also for the fact that Ryan Tannehill needs to be nowhere near a football field. That was a rough showing for him, only putting up 45 rush yards. It was a situation that I didn't love already. That Titans defensive line was elite last season. They were number 1 in stopping the rush. It seems to carry over going into this upcoming season as well. It was put on display this past Sunday. Jamal Williams just we're one of those guys that, you'll start him, but this was just a matchup that you wanted to stay far away from.
So one of my duds is, we kind of talked about him already, was Cam Akers. He's someone that you can't trust to start at this point. Like, you might see 22 carries and be like, oh, like, I know the efficiency wasn't there, only 29 yards, but I don't think you could start him going forward. The other one I do want to throw out there, he was getting a lot of hype this offseason. I'm trying to find how many snaps he played as I talk. But Khalil Herbert, he was someone who I think was a lot of people's favorite kind of late round, 9th, 10th round RB pick. He played 36% of snaps, 9 rushes for 27 yards. He did have 5 targets, 3 catches, and 37 yards. He had 9 points. So it's not that he shouldn't be in the dud section. That might be a little bit rude. But I think this Bears offensive attack, this rushing offense in particular, it's going to be a committee. Roschon Johnson got work, and he looked really good. Deontay Foreman got work. He was Deontay Foreman. He had some moments, but Deontay Foreman and Khalil Herbert. So I think the worry was that it would be a committee, and then we saw the preseason, and Khalil Herbert played every snap, and he was out there on 3rd downs. Now we're saying, oh, shit, do the Bears have a workhorse running back? At least week 1, 30% of snaps offensively is not great. You still roster him. He could be a running back 3. If another guy goes down, maybe he can move to that RB2 because he is explosive. He can be efficient. He could be a pass catcher. But right now, he can't be trusted as an RB2 in your lineup.
And it's really crazy because, again, Khalil Herbert was one of my starts of the week. I firmly believe that going against this Packers rush defense that really wasn't anything special last season and the year before that also, I was expecting Khalil to have a solid game. For him to not even have 50% of the running back shares was shocking to me. Roschon getting some pass work, that was definitely nice to see. He seemed to be one of those guys that Justin Fields was targeting as a safety blanket. But the fact that we didn't even see Khalil see 50%, that's what's not sitting right with me. because last year and any really year that David Montgomery was the running back outside of probably his rookie season, they relied on him more than any other back. But even still, we saw Khalil Herbert squeak in a few carries here and there as well because of the talent that Khalil Herbert had. For him to come out and not have 50%, that really caught me by surprise. But no doubt about it, he has to be a dud. So, Joel,
right,
let's go
move
on
to
to you.
receivers.
That's a fact. I don't want to say last topic. We'll very briefly talk about tight ends and the Thursday night preview, but the last topic we're going to go super in depth on.
So, wide receiver studs. This is a guy that it's kind of funny because Joel has been hyping up a lot recently. He's saying this guy's in a Smitty tier and a Jalen Waddle tier. Brandon Ayuk had game of ages. Week 1. I mean, he went out there and just
Bro's
8 catches, 8 targets, 129 yards, 2 touchdowns, most Pat Pete. He was having rack. He was catching the ball. He was mostly like he had an all-around fantastic game. And last season and really throughout his career, he's going into year 4 now or 5. He's steadily improved, right? Rookie year came out with 700 yards, sophomore year 800, and then last year 1,000-yard season, wide receiver 15, 8 touchdowns. But I was a little hesitant because once Brock Purdy took over in those final weeks, Ayuk was wide receiver 44, 28, 74, 32, wide receiver 3, then wide receiver 40. So he had one great game where he was playing the Raiders that game. That was the crazy back and forth game where the Niners end up winning. But it always felt like there might have been too many mouths to feed in this 49ers offense.
For sure.
And things might be different with George Kittle kind of being banged up, only had 3 receptions in this game. But Brandon Ayuk, there's a real chance he leads this team in targets this year. And he's in a contract year. He's 25 years old. He's in a prime position to break out. And week 1, he started off on a high note. And I know there was a lot of stats out there going into this week because Steelers like to play a lot of man, and Brandon Ayuk just kills man defenses. Yep. He proved those people right. So I think going forward, Ayuk is probably a high-end wide receiver 2. You probably drafted him as your wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. But Ayuk could be a guy that levels up this year while he's trying to get his bread. And the sad reality is that's probably going to take away from other pieces. It's not going to be McCaffrey, but whether it's Kittle or Devo, I don't know if Purdy's going to have enough to be able to support 3 top offensive weapons, plus get Christian McCaffrey all of his touches.
Now, with that in mind, is Ayuk one of those guys that you're looking to use as trade value? Because this is
I'm always, if I could level up, like if I could get Ayuk and I could pair him with, I don't know, like a Tyler Algier, and I could go and get a Chris Olave. If I could get a Waddle, I think I'm still doing that. I'm not taking this 1 week and just saying this is who Ayuk's going to be. And maybe Olave and, those are, outliers. You might be able to get those guys. But I think if there's a team out there, first of all, if you're trying to trade right now, go to the teams that are 0-1. Do not try to trade with teams that are 1-0 because they're feeling good. They're living high. They're 1-0. They're saying my team is set. Go to those teams that are 0-1. Go to the lowest scoring team, the second lowest scoring team who they're down the dumps. They just waited 8 months for fantasy football, and now this shit happened, right? So go to those teams if you're trying to make a trade.
This guy just gave you facts. Do not trade with the 1-0s. They're feeling all high and mighty. They're feeling like the king, and they're gonna look down at you like a peasant. Don't even entertain those guys. Those guys are just mean and not fun to handle. But my wide receiver stud, Tyreek Hill, you got to give him that acknowledgement. Wide receiver 1 on the day, 11 receptions, 15 targets, 215 yards, 19.5 yards a catch. The guy is special, and I bring him up as the wide receiver stud because he said it before the season started. I'm going for 2K this year. And how come we didn't give him that acknowledgement of being the wide receiver 1 when last year he goes from Patrick Mahomes to Tua Tagovailoa and he puts his career high in yards. And he goes week 1, 2 touchdowns, over 200 yards against a respectable Chargers secondary, but unbelievable the output that he put forth. Tua and him, they're trying to make that conversation for the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the league.
And they got it.
I mean, unbelievable. I had to give my Miami boys that shout out, but another guy I want to give a shout out to because I kind of been unfair to him, I guess you could say, but understanding that he was away from football for 2 years, played 5 games, then did miss the rest of the season with mental health issues, decided to step away from the game. and then to be suspended for a full year for gambling. I got to give love and I got to shout out Calvin Ridley for him to put up the game that he had, 8 receptions, over 100 yards to get into the end zone in his first game in almost 2 years is a testament to how much of a dog he is. And it's very obvious that they want to make him the focal point of this offense. We saw Etienne get into the end zone. We saw Zay Jones honestly put forth a solid matchup as well. But all in all, Calvin Ridley was that guy, and it goes perfectly into my dud of none other than Christian Kirk. One catch, 9 yards. That's it. Against a Colts defense, a Colts secondary that is very, very forgiving. And for him to only have 1 catch for 9 yards caught me by surprise. And for him to really not be someone that was highly active in this offense at all really is crazy, for the fact that he was their most reliable and trustworthy option last season. It is week 1, not overreacting. I still believe in the long term of Christian Kirk. I mean, I have to at this point, honestly. I have him in so many leagues, but regardless, I do believe that this offense with Trevor Lawrence at the quarterback, he's not going to have it where Christian Kirk is going to have this low of a low for many weeks in a row. I think next week he gets back on the wagon, but not a great start if you are a Christian Kirk owner, and an amazing start if you spent that high draft capital on a Calvin Ridley.
Forgot to mention my other stud, Puka Nacua, rookie wide receiver that you mentioned earlier.
That's a fact.
He's from BYU, day 3 pick, 5th round pick, but he had, coming out of the draft, talent-wise, was probably day 2 talent, but he was dealing with some injuries at BYU. He broke his foot, I want to say his sophomore year. And then throughout his career, he was really always just dealing with these minor injuries that either kept him off the field, or when he was playing, he was never 100%. He got a ton of hype in OTAs in the preseason. He didn't really do anything exceptional in the preseason, at least in the games. But his first game NFL debut, 14 targets, 10 receptions, and 119 yards. One of the most impactful stats that you could look at is yards per route run, which basically says, for the amount of routes you run, how many yards do you get? Last year, the elite of the elite, usually if you're over 2, you're one of the best receivers in the league. Last year, Tyreek was an outlier at number 1 at 3.2 yards per route run. And then you had number 2 was Justin Jefferson at 2.6. So, like I said, 2 is a really good number. Tyreek and Jettas were just outliers. Puka Nacua had a yards per route run of 3.4. He was out there on the field, and he was getting every look from Matt Stafford. He was definitely went undrafted in your leagues, unless you're in a fucking 30-round league. As long as Cooper Kupp is out, I think you could start Puka Nacua. I don't think 14 targets just goes away. I think throughout training camp, he was getting the hype deservedly. And week 1, he was Matt Stafford's favorite target. So I think you go out there in the waiver wire. I'm not spending a ton just because once Kupp does come back, he probably becomes a flex option at best. And maybe he could service as a wide receiver too. We've seen Matt Stafford be able to, have multiple wide receivers that are fantasy relevant. But I do think he's someone that at least week 2, week 3, week 4 without Cooper Kupp can be in your lineup. And my dud is also my sit of the week, and someone that I'm not feeling good about going forward is Drake London. It sucks because as a prospect, I love Drake London so much. Coming out of USC, he was my 3rd favorite receiver.
He's a fucking dog.
He's a dog.
What are they doing?
He's so
Explain it to me.
Unfortunately, he landed on a team that is most likely going to have the least amount of pass attempts in the NFL. Josh Dobbs and the Cardinals are going to end up throwing the ball more than them. Desmond Ridder had 18 pass attempts. 18 pass attempts in 2020. Zach Wilson just had like 30. Like, the 18 pass attempts is so minimal that you almost have to sit there and laugh. And the sickest part about this, Drew, the sickest part is the Falcons won comfortably. The worst part about it is the Falcons won, so Arthur Smith can go back, put his legs up, and said, I'm doing it right. I could give Tyler Algier more carries. I don't have to give Drake London the ball. I can only give Kyle Pitts 2 receptions, even though Desmond Ridder threw a duck in double coverage. Pitts throws a guy out of the way, makes a 20, 30-yard catch down the field. Arthur Smith is sitting back and saying, we won the game. So guess what? Going forward, I don't see the path to Drake London having a breakout season. To me, he becomes a wide receiver 3, a flex option that you're probably banking on a touchdown to be fantasy relevant. I know last year down the stretch, he had some games with Desmond Ridder where he really showed out. But I just have a feeling that with Bijan there now and Tyler Algier, they're going to be passing the ball 18 to 25 times a game. The top end is probably 30. So you could be the best receiver in the world, but you could have an insane target share of 30%, and that's going to be like 7 targets. So there's simply not going to be enough pass attempts to make Drake London fantasy relevant. Unfortunately, it feels like a bit of a wasted pick if you had to take him in that round 6-ish range. 6-7 is probably where you had to take him.
I was unfortunately one of those guys that my hand was forced, and I had to take Drake London. The value was like the 7th, 8th round. I couldn't just let him continue to fall, understanding how talented he is and understanding that Desmond Ridder and him had a slight connection towards the end of the season, but it's just tragic what's going on over there in Atlanta. You have Kyle Pitts, you have Drake London, and these are two guys that you have to think about every single week when you're setting your lineup. I'm telling you right now, I have Michael Thomas on my bench. I am starting Michael Thomas next week over Drake London. I can't feel safe with Drake London in my lineup. It's almost impossible so long as Desmond Ridder is the quarterback. They simply do not trust him to push the ball down the field. He seems to not trust himself to push the ball down the field. And it seems as if it's a waste of wide receiver and tight end talent, if you ask me. But real quick, Joel, you mentioned...
quick before we move on.
Go ahead.
Sorry, quick before we move on, because I just want to go. I see people in the comments asking about certain players. I just want to quickly go over some guys that we didn't talk about, and at least the duds. I'll get some studs later. Lamar, I don't think anyone cares. He'll bounce back. He'll be fine.
Agreed.
Najee Harris, my set of the week, going up against the Niners defense was never a good matchup, but only 5 fantasy points. I don't see a ton of upside with Najee Harris, especially you have Jaylen Warren in the backfield. I don't love him going forward. But I think the more interesting player in terms of running back duds, DeAndre Swift. Now, you have Rashawn Petty, who was a healthy scratch. And then Kenneth Gainwell at like the last week of the offseason, the last preseason game, it's Kenneth Gainwell is going to be the RB1 of this team. And everyone was kind of like, yeah, whatever. He'll be the RB1. Yeah, right. And he was the RB1. DeAndre Swift got really no touches. Kenneth Gainwell, 18 touches, 74 yards from scrimmage. Swift had 2 touches for 3 yards. So this Philly backfield right now looks like Kenneth Gainwell's, and there's really nobody else that you could trust. Quickly moving on to wide receivers, T. Higgins put up a stinker, 0 points. All I'm going to say is last year, Smitty put up 0 points in his first week. He was fine. T. Higgins, we're not overreacting to. Tyler Lockett, 3 fantasy points, had a hamstring injury. If he's healthy, you start him. Sky Moore is a guy a lot of people were hyping up. A lot of people thought that he could become the wide receiver 1. He did nothing. He didn't do anything. Sky Moore, I think I'd rather have Puka Nacua going forward. That's how I feel about Sky Moore.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know
if I love that. I think that overall we need to see that offense with Kelsey, but I understand where your head's at. It seems as if with the unknown of Cooper Kupp, it's going to be a consistent target share for Puka Nacua. So I see where your head's at, but I need to see where this Chiefs offense is when Kelsey gets back.
For sure.
Last thing I want to say about duds, Josh Jacobs, the fact that he had 19 carries, 48 yards, average of 3.5 a carry. I want to acknowledge this because as I'm watching the game, he seems so visibly out of shape. Seemed like he didn't have that same burst.
Slow. Yeah.
He really did look obviously out of shape to me. One of those that I'm keeping an eye on because I know he was obviously the league leader in rushing yards last season, finished top 3, I believe, at the running back position last season. Someone that was drafted extremely high. So one to look out for. It's going to take him a couple weeks to get back into NFL shape, in my opinion. But I still think that if you're one of those guys that are 1-0, hey, you get to a 2-0, 3-0, Josh Jacobs is on one of the worst teams in the league. Maybe you take a chance and get that guy onto your roster because he still has something to prove and he still has money to make. Lastly, we're going to wrap up real quick. Let's talk about tight ends and the terrible landscape that is The tight end one this week was Hunter Henry. Now, I say that with respect to Hunter. He gave us a solid performance, 50-some yards. I believe it was 56 yards and a touchdown. Mac Jones and him, they've obviously put forth fantasy relevance before, where Hunter Henry did lead the league in touchdowns at the tight end position. But what do you make of the tight end position, super briefly? Are you one of those guys that are just ready to ban tight ends from your fantasy leagues? I say that knowing the answer already.
Listen, I've never been the biggest tight end guy. You are, no. But to be fair, we were without the top tight ends this week. Didn't have Travis Kelce.
No Kelce,
didn't have Mark Andrews. And you look at the top tight ends. You mentioned Henry, 56 yards and a touchdown. Basically, if you scored a touchdown to your top tight end, Hayden Hurst, 40 yards, touchdown. Donald Parham, 20 yards and a touchdown, was the tight end.
He actually looked good. He looked good.
He did. Blake Bell, 12 yards and a touchdown. Tight end 4 on the week. TJ Hawkinson, 8 catches for 35 yards. Those 8 catches really helped. Harrison Bryant, 2 catches, 5 yards, a touchdown. Evan Ingram, 49 yards on 5 catches. Cole Kmet, 44 yards. Like, Pat Freiermuth was top 10 tight end. He had 3 yards. So this tight end position without the top 2 dogs there, if you don't get a touchdown, you're probably screwed unless you're TJ Hawkinson, who actually commands targets in the offense. I think guys like Freiermuth, Laporta, Kincaid, like the young guys who are kind of up and coming, more so the rookies need to earn a role. I think Pat Freiermuth has a role, especially now with Deontay down. His role should expand. I do think that if you don't have one of those top guys, I would go out. Luke Musgrave's another one that I would try to go and get one of these rookie tight ends. All of them did something this week. You know, Laporta probably had the best game, but Kincaid had 4 catches. Musgrave should have had a huge game if
he folded.
Jordan Love didn't miss him. So if you don't have the Kelce's, the Andrews, the Hawkinsons, Kyle Pitts, we didn't mention, but he put up 4 or 5 points. I would go out and try to look for those rookie tight ends, and hopefully down the line they could be something.
I'm with you. Now, to wrap up the show, we're going to briefly go over the upcoming Thursday night game, an amazing game. We're talking about the Vikings versus the Eagles. Now, obviously, you're starting Jalen Hurts. You most likely are starting Kirk Cousins. You're starting Justin Jefferson. Now, I'm going to throw some names at you. You tell me if you feel great, you feel good, you don't feel so good, or you're completely out on starting them.
Real quick, Ron the Goat. I see you. Dallas Goedert, stinker, 0 points. I'm still starting him. I'm okay.
All right. Yeah, no doubt about it. Dallas Goedert, especially in this matchup versus the Vikings defense, who really continue to leave off where they ended, to pick up where they left off, of last season. The defense seems to be just the same old Vikings defense that we saw last season. The Bucs had a field day. Baker Mayfield ended up looking impressive, which is extremely difficult to do, but a credit to Bake. I'm only joking, absolutely. But talk to me. Alexander Mattison, do you feel great? Do you feel good? Do you feel not so great? No way, no how are you starting Alexander Mattison?
I don't feel great. He did get a touchdown this week.
He did.
Rushing the ball, though, 11 attempts, 34 yards. Did have 4 targets, 3 receptions, 10 yards, but did get that touchdown. That touchdown saved him, because without it, you're looking at like 8-9 fantasy points.
Yep.
I was never high on Madison coming into the year. Going up against an Eagles defense, a front 7 that we're all expecting to still be elite, I don't feel great about it, but odds are you probably drafted Madison to be your RB2. So unless you have a better option, you might be stuck with him.
I also don't feel great. Ramondre did a lot of his damage in the air, through the air. I think he had around the same amount of receiving yards as Hunter Henry. A lot of that came on that one big play where I think he went for over 30 yards. I think it was a 31-yard reception. But that's not Madison's game. And the Eagles did a really good job of limiting Stevenson on the ground. That's not a matchup that I love. If I have other options, I'm definitely looking forward to that. Now, another name on the Minnesota side of the ball, Jordan Addison. Do you feel great? Do you feel good? Not so good? Or no way, no how? I think I know where you're leaning, but talk to me.
No, I like Addison. I know I had the tweet out there saying 1K yards coming soon. But in reality, it was a broken coverage that he kind of got behind the defender, had a big touchdown. Outside of that, 6 targets, 4 receptions, 60 yards. Half of that came from that touchdown. Played 56% of snaps, wide receiver 17 on the week. Flex play.
I agree.
Probably I would feel much more comfortable if you're in maybe a double flex where you start him as a wide receiver 4.
Sure.
just because 6 targets isn't ideal when how many times did this Vikings team throw the ball? How many attempts did Kirk Cousins have? Let's see here. Kirk Cousins had a whopping 44 attempts, and Jordan Addison had 6 targets. Not ideal.
It's also unfair when Jettas is Jettas, and he's just going to get the attention that
but
But the second half, it was a tale of two halves, bro. It was a tale of two halves. Jettas, I think he only had, 2 catches in the second half?
Mm-hmm. But Kirk Cousins completing 33 passes, and Addison only getting 4 of them. Hawkins had 8 receptions. Right now, he's the third option on this offense behind Hawk and behind Jettas. And even Madison had 4 targets as well. So he's an explosive player who could give you some upside, but I would still wait a couple of weeks so that I feel more confident.
You feel more confident in Drake London or Jordan Addison rest of the season?
Jordan Addison.
That is just absolutely gutting to hear. Yeah. But I can't say I disagree. I feel good starting Jordan. I feel good starting Jordan because you understand Jettas is going to be that number 1 option. Always that attention is going to be on Jettas, which means that Jordan Addison, who has the capabilities to get open, is going to have one of those one-on-one situations where he just has to beat the defender over the top, which we saw this past weekend, that he can get into the end zone and be fantasy relevant. You're starting Hawkinson. That's obvious. Over to Philadelphia. You're starting Hurts. Kenny Gainwell, questionable for this upcoming matchup, was the lead target share getter at the running back position. I don't know how you want me to word that. Had the most snaps at the running back position. There it is. Are you feeling great? You feeling good? Not so good? No way, no how.
So he says he has a rib injury. Didn't practice Monday, which not surprising. He just played on Sunday. But on the short week, this is going to be a game that I think a lot of points get scored. Even though the Eagles defense were expecting to be good, I do think we're going to see some regression. We saw that against Mac Jones and the Patriots. So Kenny Gainwell, 14 attempts, 4 targets, and 4 receptions. I think you could start him probably as a low-end running back 2 this week. Okay. Right now, he looks like to be the running back 1 in Philly. And on an offense that is going to be in the top of the league, one of the best scoring offenses, they're going to be able to move the ball on Minnesota. There's a strong chance he gets a touchdown. So I'm okay starting Gainwell.
Okay, I can understand, especially for our listeners that are in deeper leagues. Kenny Gainwell is definitely not a bad play. I do have my concerns over the running back situation in Philadelphia. Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch. That was one that was shocking to me. We saw DeAndre Swift get almost no love, no opportunity in this Philadelphia offense. So it does seem to be Kenny Gainwell's backfield, but I need to see it for another week, maybe 2 weeks, to be very certain that this is Kenny Gainwell's. But having that injury, it does not bode well for him in my eyes. So, of course, you're starting A.J. Brown. You're starting Smitty. In deeper leagues, are you thinking of Quez Watkins?
Hopefully not.
I agree. Dallas Goedert with the tight end landscape, you absolutely have no choice. Before we go, we're going to read some super chats. First one comes from Sean Courtney. Jets defense, special teams just helped me win my fantasy game by 1 point. Shout out to the Jets and all their fans. Great group win.
Shout out to the Cowboys defense. They put in work for me this week to get a win.
One of the best defensive fantasy performances you'll ever see from the Dallas Cowboys. In our leagues, the Dallas Cowboys put up 41 fantasy points. Shout out to Andre Ala one more time. My first round draft pick's gone.
Shout out to Andre.
Hope that he's doing all right. But Andre, you are a pick aside legend. I don't know. I'm really trying to think.
I hope you didn't draft Rodgers in the first. Shouldn't have drafted Dobbins in the first.
Unless he drafted Garrett Wilson egregiously high. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But Black Sunday, Achilles for A-Rod. Yeah, it's sad. I'm sorry, Joel, that we had to read that out loud. But shout out for the donation. Of course, our brother Santos, pick aside meme. We appreciate your love always. Black Sunday again. Also to end the night, 7 straight versus Denver.
Never easy.
Gotta eat that, man. Not great.
Yeah. I feel like it's a relatively easy opponent because I remember going through your schedule and saying you should start up the season 2-0.
I'm gonna be transparent. It's the Commanders. Okay, not horrible. But still, I'll save it for the show tomorrow.
Broncos, Dolphins. You're rooting for the Dolphins?
It's Fins fam for the rest of the season, bro. I'm over this Broncos team. I'm gonna go crazier on the show tomorrow, but I gotta be honest, bro. I'm defeated. I am defeated.
Okay,
I
last thing before we go, because next week we definitely got to do some sort of waiver segment. So
Agreed.
last thing, just tell me your favorite waiver wire, just one player. Is it Puka? Is it Kyron Williams? Is it Justice Hill? Is it Gus Edwards? Who is there one guy that sticks out above the rest?
It's got to be Puka. You got to respect Sean McVay, and you have to respect Matthew Stafford for what he has done for fantasy wide receivers. We have the greatest wide receiver season of all time with Cooper Kupp. You have the greatest statistical receiving yard season with Calvin Johnson. Obviously, these two have such a major skill gap over a Puka Nacua, but it's respecting what Matthew Stafford has done to guys like Golden Tate, Brandon LaFell. I mean, these are guys that are, Golden Tate's one of those above average to really good wide receivers, but you have to respect that when Stafford's on the field, he's going to aid a fantasy receiver. I'll finish off these super chats. Oh, go ahead, bud. If you want to give your wide receiver pick,
we do the super chat.
All right, sweet. Shout out to NG. Imagine Sanders in NY, and no, not the Giants.
Shador. That would be tough.
That would be hot.
There's gonna be a quarterback that falls into that teens for sure, maybe multiple.
If I'm the Jets, I'm doing everything I can to get Kyler, bro. I know you think that there's a risk. Garrett Wilson and Kyler Murray.
What if Rodgers plays? What if Rodgers wants to play next year?
He's just coming off an Achilles at age 40. I get you respect him. Like you want to respect him as the Jets franchise. You don't want to do that. But what are the chances that he actually wants to come back? What are the chances that he comes back 100%? What are the chances that he wants to play behind that offensive line? I don't feel great with those odds.
I think there's a 60% chance he plays next year.
60. That's high.
60. All this offseason, he's saying, I don't want to be 1 year in New York. Like they traded too much to just be one and done. And I know he never imagined a season-ending injury on the fourth play of the season, but I don't think that he's just gonna be like, oh, that's gonna be the end of it. Like, sorry, Jets.
He wants to go out and was
embracing the team.
I don't disagree with you there.
One thing I want to mention, because J.K. Dobbins done for the season, pain, very sad.
Horrible
Once J.K. Dobbins went down, Justice Hill saw the most out of Edwards and Hill. Hill saw 41% of snaps to Edwards 38, 41 of the rushing attempts to Edwards 47, and Justice Hill, 33% of routes to Edwards 27%. So basically seems like a 50-50 time split. Edwards has been better throughout his career. He's also one of the most efficient backs in the league. Like he averages 5 yards per carry, not a ton of attempts, but I don't love either. It feels like that's going to be a running back by committee going forward. I think I lean Gus just slightly, but I don't think I'm breaking the bank for either. The only other player I think I want to mention, who else haven't we got? We talked about Puka. That might be it. I like Jacoby Myers, but that concussion is scary. He's probably going to miss at least 1 week, but I don't think 10 targets, 9 receptions, 80 yards. He's an underneath merchant. We know that's what Jimmy G loves, so he could be a sneaky flex play. Romeo Doubs also might be on your waiver wire. Pick him up. 2 touchdowns last week if you have a spot for him. But that's pretty much it. I don't think
we can give some shout outs. Rashid Shaheed, are you buying in or no?
I wish he wasn't number 22, but it is interesting. I don't know, especially with a short bench. Like, would you rather have Shaheed or Sky Moore rest of the season?
Sky Moore.
Okay, so you probably can't pick him up if you're still that high.
No, I don't disagree. Nico Collins, maybe he was drafted towards the second to last round of your draft, if that. Nico Collins, 12th right now in the league in yards with 80 yards. He saw 11 targets. Definitely one of those guys that I'm looking at. CJ Stroud very clearly favored him. So one of those guys that I'm looking at to add for sure.
Last one I have, Tajay Spears out-snapped Derrick Henry. I don't know why. And last year, the first couple of weeks, it took Henry to get going as well. Strange. Tajay Spears showed a lot in the preseason. In this game that he had against the Saints, only 3 attempts for 27 yards, 4 targets, but 54% of snaps. He was out on the field a lot. Didn't see the workload you would have expected, but more than anything, he's probably just going to cut into Derrick Henry rather than him having standalone value.
Watching the game back and even watching it on Sunday. They were playing a lot of shotgun, and obviously where Derrick did get involved in the passing game slightly, he was definitely efficient through the air. They were playing a lot of shotgun, and Tajay is that guy that they're looking for in the pass game, which is probably why he saw so much opportunity. But that should never happen. It makes no sense to me. Derrick Henry was having his way, and they just did not utilize him anywhere near to what we've seen in the past. Last name we need to respect, Kendrick Bourne. Saw 11 targets, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. It was reported prior to the season starting that Kendrick Bourne was made untouchable, that the Patriots were not looking to trade him.
Untouchable is insane.
I've been telling you for years about Kendrick Bourne.
You love pass receivers.
Is this finally easy? Easy, because Devontae Parker was a one-hit wonder. The dude does not separate. Are we here to say, and Tyquan will have his moment, I firmly believe that. Is this finally the year? Is this finally the year
Kendrick Bourne year?
Is like
Jacoby
that?
Myers, he's the wide receiver 1 now?
Bro.
He can get value.
Strong flex.
You have an offense coordinator there.
Because Kendrick Bourne's definitely one of those that are on waivers right now. That's a strong flex, because that 11 targets, you mentioned it. That doesn't come around very often, especially on waivers. You're going to have Puku. Shout out to Tutu, who I believe he had 8 targets, 6 receptions. Right here, 11 targets, and also Nico Collins, same there with 11 targets. Let's finish off these super chats and let's get out of here. It's almost 1:30.
And Santos, if you're still here, please send me the timestamps. That'd be great.
Real, that we would appreciate that, Santos. Aiden Boyer donates $20. Shout out to you, brother. Xavier Gibson won me fantasy. I love the Jets now. Shout out to the best podcast out there. Love y'all. Well, Aiden, we love you and we appreciate you chilling with us so late at night. Santos donates again. Raise your hand if your team is undefeated. Santos, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what your team is. You're a Raiders fan suddenly. I know you love Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you really are shameless. You root for every team that's not the Denver Broncos. I got my eye on you, Santos. And the last super chat that we received on the night, or the last one that I'm seeing right now, from Clutch City 71, Josh Allen is closer to Carson Wentz than he is to Patrick Mahomes. I think that's wildly disrespectful. But I will say, and we'll leave you with this, is Josh Allen a Brian Dable merchant? Something that I'm going to leave the fans with. Listen, we thank you guys for tuning in to episode 3 of the Fantasy Reaction. We're going to be going live every single Monday. I don't know if we're going to be going live every single Thursday, but we will be recording on Thursday to be released on Friday. We appreciate you guys tuning in, and we will see you next time.